Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Juju Show, episode 37. Sorry, I was away a little bit, so now we got a lot of stuff to catch up on. And I have an awesome look at the crew we got today. How we doing, everybody? Corey, what's up, man?
Good.
Heather, nice to see you join in from the Juju core side of the fence.
Hi.
James, you're in like some new fancy digs or something.
Old school digs, man. Old school digs.
Well, hopefully the weather out in Portland's treating you well. I know it's hot here, but it's supposed to finally cool off tomorrow. Come on, cool air. Blow some of that over this way, beauty. Kevin, how you doing, man?
Great, but I find it hysterical that you're complaining how hot it is where you are.
It's hot. Yeah, all right. It's not Texas hot or whatever, but it's hotter than I want it. Good grief. I live up in the north of the country for a reason. It turns out it didn't work. So let's get started. All right, we got a bunch of stuff to get to today. The first thing I wanted to mention was this cool tutorial. We had some great community folks jump in and wrote up some PRs against the docs, and the docs coordinated and worked with them and took their updates to the charming docs and put together a tutorial on tutorials.ubuntu.com on charm development, just like a basic introduction to charm development. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty well done. Got 8 steps of stuff to walk through. It walks you through them all. Really well put together. So I'll have a link in the show notes, and I'm pretty sure it went out in a lot of other places, but I would encourage folks to, if you're new to charming, you're trying to on-ramp some folks, it's a great resource. I'm really happy to see the community engagement come in and help write that out and interacting and engaging with the docs team to kind of put that together. And hopefully it will help a lot of people. So check it out. Next up, Juju has a Discourse site. So at discourse.jujucharms.com, we are setting up a Discourse site. And you're going to be like, Rick, I already get enough email. I don't want more or whatever. Well, what we're trying to do, we really want to encourage, we have stuff in a lot of places right now. There's like development documentations in the GitHub wiki. There's stuff on a Juju and a Juju dev mailing list. And why we have 2 of those, I'll never know. And then there's stuff we have internally. So we have stuff thrown everywhere. And so the idea is to try to break it down into a single source that we can stick things. So we've got different categories in this Discourse instance for, charming and charm discussions, developer documentation discussions where we can drop tips about testing and setting up and making PRs and all that. To conjure-up has a section in there. So if you have questions or want to talk about how awesome conjure-up is or talk about different spells and stuff, you got your own home there. And the goal is to deprecate off the mailing lists and to move stuff from the wiki and the stuff in the Juju code tree around certain documentation stuff and have something that's more updatable and searchable, and it's got one home. And this has worked out pretty well for the Snap team. And so based on their experience, and they were saying this is 2 thumbs up, we're like, all right, well, we'll give it a spin too. So it's fresh, not everything, we're slowly migrating stuff as we hit it and all that. So go check it out. Throw topics in. Don't be afraid of messing anything up. We're all trying to figure out how it's going to work and all that. So there's going to be some learning curve for everyone involved. But go in, throw an account up, use SSO for the back end. So, anywhere else that you were using your US, and comment around. You may even want to read the next topic, which is the 2.4.0 release announcement I have up on there. So, woo! Months of work, big release. 2.4.0 is out the door. Fully supporting Bionic. A lot of, honestly, this release was a lot of like cleanup and bug fixing and just stuff that we have learned from running, thousands and thousands of models and machines over the last, year, between improvements for kind of handling, HA and managing when that hits issues and stuff. If you're a charmer, one of the really cool big things is the charm goal state. Oftentimes folks have charms that when they come up, they're like, hey, it's just me. I'm going to come up in single unit mode and I'm a standalone server. I'm going to implement all the things. And then later on, they'll find out that, no, there's 3 of me, and I really need to reconfigure myself in HA mode and split up the work that's done, and they need to adapt. And so you end up with these charms that when they deploy, the first thing they end up doing is like running through their install steps a couple of times as the model comes up and the bits come to play. And the goal state allows the charm itself to say, hey, what's going to happen, and make intelligent decisions and shortcuts based on that. So if it knows it's going to come up in HA mode, the charm may go, okay, hold on, I'm going to wait till I hear a ping from all my peers before I go through and do, installing Heartbeat and stuff or whatever. I'm going to, I may make more intelligent decisions and be more efficient about that. And it's really helpful. Sometimes there are things that can only be done once. I know there was a famous one where like you have a Ceph config option that once it's written, that's it. Never be updated again. And so stuff like that is really important to be able to kind of know what the future holds.
Wait. Let me tell you one other awesome, maybe not immediately recognized things about goal states is that you can set better status, right? So often we have charms that say they're blocked, but it's only because the relation has been made but not acknowledged by one peer or another, or one side or the other. Maybe it's busy doing something else. So that goal state is super useful to say, okay, it's coming. So you're not really blocked. You're waiting, right?
Right. So, no, that's a really, really good point. In a world where we're waiting for VMs to come up, and they can come up, sometimes in drastically different times. I know on Amazon, man, I can get some stuff up in 2 minutes and some up in 7 minutes, right? It just kind of depends on where I'm at, what's going on. And so that time can definitely misinform the user. I don't have one. When just hold on. If you waited 4 more minutes, you would, So, yeah, no, it'll be good. So for charm authors, I encourage you to play with it, check it out, provide feedback. And, obviously the downside is I have given you more work to do. Update your charms accordingly. You're welcome. Let's see. I'm just looking through anything else that jumps out and bites me in the release stuff. There's a bunch of proxy stuff to be more intelligent, a bunch of bugs fixes. But you're like, all right, that's great, Rick. I have it. How do I get it? What do I do with it? Well, one thing I want to point out is that it's available all in the snaps now. It's the latest stable snap is 2.4. And I can hear already, but Rick, I have production stuff and it's 2.3, and I really am not ready for 2.4 until Kevin runs it for a week and finds all the issues that I haven't found yet. To which I'll say, that's coming. We're working with the Snap folks to get track set up for a 2.3 release track, which will then have a edge and beta and candidate and stable 2.3 version of Juju that you can go back and rely on if you hit anything crazy. The track's created, but we've got to get the stuff fed into it. We're also going to have a 2.4 one. There's a bunch of stuff around that'll be coming, but it's not there yet. It's in the process. So in the meantime, let me know if you hit that. Becomes a big problem with Blocker.
Can I jump in with a quick question around that?
Shoot.
Yeah, so you say that you're going to come up with tracks for the 2.3 version, but it is only the client that will auto update from 2.3 to 2.4, correct? Yeah. So that and the client, the 2.4 client would be backwards compatible. So it really shouldn't.
This is totally true. And we actually had someone file an issue on this, which it took me a minute. I think they were like, oh, great, the 2.4 snaps out. So they went to their running controller and went, but wait, this still says 2.3. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Remember that only the client is shipped via Snap. The rest of the stuff is pulled down at install time. We're not going to go be in the business of live updating your production infrastructure that you may not want to have us auto upgrading and rolling, upgrades and stuff out for you at this time. So cool. And you can always use a newer version of the client to bootstrap an older version, right? You can always specify the version at bootstrap time if you needed to get a 2.3.8 controller to test something or whatnot. Very true. Oh, and one of the developers in the team, next up, has put out a call to test something. It is a new presence implementation, and presence is the chunk of code in Juju that does things like notice when a unit goes down. And it does things like, speaking of, coming up saying it's blocked when it's not. Everyone ever deploy and notice how the status of that machine will go from like it's coming up, and then it goes into downstate, and then comes back up into upstate, and you're like, oh no, it went down, and then you start freaking out, and then you look and it's back, and it's all fine. That's because the presence code is more poly, like it hits every so often, and there's a little window where it'll hit and see it's down, but it's coming back up. So the new present stuff supposedly addresses with all of that. It should make some stuff like status a little bit faster if you run Juju status on large models a lot, things like that. And so Tim would love to have some folks test it, and you can opt into testing it by setting a flag, a feature flag, basically, in the controller config. And in his post in Discourse, he has the copy and paste instructions on how to set it so that you can try it out, and you can turn it on and off. I believe on the same controller, like, you can try it for a day and go, oh, that didn't work for me or whatever, and go back. I haven't tried that, but it's just in the config, so I would expect that to work. So go give that a try. And what I love is this is a great way for users to give smaller chunks of feedback without waiting, like, before we make this live for everyone in 2.5 and you have to deal with it, give it a try and see how it works for you in 2.4. Cool. All right, releases, new stuff. What do you got, Corey? You got some new stuff.
I do have some new stuff, so I'll get into that. First off, we had an update to conjure-up today, and there was another one, slightly larger one, a few days ago. But the big points from that are microcate should now show up in conjure-up, so you can conjure up and then select microcates, and instead of deploying a full, large stack using Juju, it will use the microcate snap, and you can get a tiny developer system. It's just if you're used to using conjure-up, it's a slightly nicer way of kind of getting that, and you can set some of the options. It walks you through, what options are available and what things you can enable. We'll continue to work on that as well. The newest version supports what's called a conjure file, so you can create a file that specifies some of the configuration options, the spell, and kind of it's an improvement, I guess, to the headless. So you can set everything up beforehand and just kick it off, and it'll run and do everything that you set up. And there's documentation for that here, which I'll put in IRC as well. The other big thing was that prompted the release today. Brew for the macOS version switched to Python 3.7, which caused some issues. So we had to do a bunch of updates to support Python 3.7. So it now supports Python 3.7. I think that's it for conjure-up. The other big thing is the Integrator Charms. I think we've talked about this on the Juju Show before when we just had AWS, but we now have Integrator Charms support for AWS, GCP, and OpenStack, and Azure is in progress. I've got some more links for those. And these let you, if a charm that you're deploying, like Kubernetes is our big use case, supports native integration with certain clouds, you can deploy these integrator charms and use the new Juju Trust feature that's in 2.4 to trust the integrator charm, and then add the relation to say your Kubernetes. And the integrator charm can grant a specific set of roles to Kubernetes to enable the cloud native integration. You don't have to do any of the AWS specific setup or GCP specific setup. You can just add the relation. It configures everything. Kubernetes says, okay, I know I'm on GCP. I'll set the cloud provider, and you get GCP back persistent disk storage enabled out of the box. Makes it super easy.
So that's gonna let like in the Kubernetes example, I know like the load balancing is always the one, right? The big one where right. I can use this proxy so that my charm can proxy through to the AWS load balancing API and make calls and stuff to it with the cloud credentials that the model already has. So, this means I don't have to keep the credentials in my charm. I don't have to, I don't have to trust all the charms in my model to go, all of you may now have cloud credentials that will now hit my credit card. Give you like an audit point. Let's see. Is there anything else? Is it doing anything with the storage APIs or anything? I don't know what all the Kubernetes things can hit now.
Yeah, where there's two examples in the README for each of the integrator charms that shows you kind of a test case using Kubernetes on how to enable the load balancer integration, or how to utilize the load balancer integration, and how to utilize the storage integration. In theory, it can also support S3 or object storage integration, DNS and network management, but we haven't really tested those features heavily yet, because the two big ones that people want are the storage and load balancer. Yep.
Gotcha. And speaking of Kubernetes, Kevin, how is the world of Kubernetes these days?
What a segue.
I'm getting better at this. By 37, I can segue.
Yeah. So it's getting good. Since the last show, at least, it's been a couple of weeks. So we've had two big releases out of Kubernetes. One is the 110.5 release that came out, call it 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, something like that. And then a major release, 111, has come out recently. If you check the snaps and charms that are available out in the store now, I think still the latest track will send you on the 110 path, but there are 111 tracks if you want to, if you're following those and are waiting to get your hands on 111. Those have been promoted to stable in the 111 track. So I have like a 400-page release notes from upstream Kubernetes. We will distill that out into more proper release notes for consumption by Juju folks, and I'll send that to you so you'll get it in the show notes.
Wow, change much? Where's Marco when you need him to like demonstrate a live upgrade for me? Come on.
Yeah, right.
A few shows ago, Marco jumped in and did a live prod upgrade and gave Kevin heart attacks. And
dude,
me a great deal. And I wish he was here today. We could do that as often as he wants. Anyway, sorry. Cool. Well, that's good to hear that the Kubernetes upstream keeps on trucking, and that we keep on tracking it pretty tight, and that folks are able to get it and upgrade to it and run it with the charms and stuff you guys are doing. Awesome. And I assume the conjure-up is making all that happen and makes it as easy to do as ever. Awesome. All right. You guys ready for show and tell time? Show and tell time. All right. Let's see if I can get the screen share thing going. So what I have to show may not seem like much. Look at this. I have an elk sack bundle. Uh-oh, that errored. Ooh, hook failed start. Oh, BD gave me a failed one. No, I'll have to see what's up with that. But so this is just, it's Juju. It's a GUI. It's running. I've got this SSL termination demo bundle going where we're terminating Jenkins and the Ghost blog behind a single SSL endpoint. And you're like, Rick, that's cool and all, but like, why is it cool? And my answer is because of this. This is a LXD cluster of 3 nodes out of my MAS running just some, running some containers that I just created with, the LXD launch command. And you'll see that they're spread across 3 different NUCs, NUC 1, 2, and 3. But the other thing you'll see is Juju units running. So everything that I've deployed and running there is actually running across my LXD cluster. And if I were to take my NUC, which had 7 nodes to it, in theory, I can build a 7-machine cloud and use Juju to deploy all kinds of workloads dispersed across all the nodes. And that is currently working now. I'm going to cheat. I had hoped that this was going to be in the Edge snap today, and it didn't make it. There's a PR that's up that hasn't landed. As soon as it lands, I have a set of instructions on how to set this up so that you could play with the Edge snap and try along at home. There's some tricks to it. You'll see that I can do things like cancel. If not on the NUC. Let's go back to my machine, my client machine. So if you look at my list of clouds, I have my cluster cloud, this is going to be turned into a LXD cluster type instead. And if you look at my credentials, well, let's not look at my credentials because they're my credentials. That I have a my cluster credential, which is for my LXD cluster. Right now, there's some manual certificate management stuff that you have to do that as the feature moves forward, will automate and help pull in and make it so that you don't have to copy and paste certs from your cluster to your client and so on. So it's rough around the edges, but it's kind of badass to create models and throw bundles and stuff up and just see LXD start to go, LXD managing it all for me with a front end API endpoint and really put some work out. So I know in my experience in the past on localhost, around 18 to 20 containers per machine is pretty reasonable. So you figure if I had all 7 nodes in my Nook cluster, I mean, you're talking about 140 VMs that you could, basically cloud instances you could get up to on 7 Nooks. That's a pretty damn good price per node thing to run, in my opinion, for doing some larger scale out. I want to test stuff in HA where I have, 3 units of everything, and I want to test HA failover conditions and stuff, or and so on. So look for this in the Edge Snap coming soon. I'll put the notes and the instructions in the Discourse instance once this stuff lands and I can verify it's in the Edge Snap. But pretty cool. I'm really excited about it. The team's been making some really awesome progress on this. So you're BD's clapping but muted. Thank you. Yes. So Simon and Joe, bravo, gentlemen, bravo. Cool. So if you want to try it out, let me know. Hit me up in IRC. I'll get you the Discourse link when it's up, so on and so forth. Awesome. Try stuff out. That's all I've got. Anyone else have anything else they want to bring up? BD, you got anything you wanted to share today? No?
I'm good, brother. Thanks, Rick.
You're good. I'm getting you some candy to play with, man. You got a bunch of hardware laying around, right?
Oh man, you don't want to crack this can of worms.
Okay, never mind. We'll save that for offline discussion. All right, well then let's get out of here and leave it at the show. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. And everyone, have fun. Thanks for joining us today.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.